members of the Town of Carefree, Arizona Utilities Community Facilities District in the Board of Directors of the Carefree Water Company, Inc. will come to order. Ms. Contreras, please take a silent roll call. And just remind everyone on the board, and then if those who come to speak at during the public hearing, to speak in the microphone and speak clearly, because we're recording the meeting and streaming it. Item number 1, approval of the March 21st, 2023 UCFD CWC meeting minutes. Can I have a motion for, or any discussion? Have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2, presentation of the proposed FY 23-24 Town of Carefree, Arizona Utilities Community Facilities District, Carefree UCFD budget. Mr. Crossman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. What I thought we'd start out with is an overview of the agenda items that cover the UCFD, so the Utilities Community Facilities District and the Water Company budgeting process, and those are agenda items 2, 3, 4, and 5, and just give you an overview of those items because our process has changed a little bit. I think the last 2 budgeting sessions we have followed this process, but just to make sure everybody is clear.
Excuse me. Can everybody hear?
I'm sorry.
It seems very low to me.
A little bit too low. Yeah, I know this one. I need to speak into this microphone. Thank you for letting me know early on. So at this meeting, this is a 2-step budgeting process. At this first meeting, which is held tonight on June 6th, what we will do is approve the proposed budgets for both the water company and the UCFD. And the water company proposed budget does include our proposed rates, fees, deposits, and charges. Also in this process, in the approval of a resolution that you'll be voting on, we'll also hold a public hearing on the proposed budgets. I think it's important to note that at this first step, this first meeting on tonight, we will be approving proposed budgets. It's not the adoption of the final budget. The adoption of the final budget will occur at the second stage of the process, which is on July 11th, where you can see on this slide. We will adopt the final budgets for both the UCFD and the water company. And the water company's budget also includes rates, fees, deposits, and charges. So the items on the agenda tonight include agenda item number 2, which is the proposed UCFD budget for fiscal year 23-24, the fiscal year that is coming up starting July 1. Agenda item number 3 is the proposed budget for the Carefree Water Company for the same fiscal year, which does include our rates, fees, deposits, and charges. Agenda item number 4 is your consideration of Resolution 2023-03, which approves only the proposed budgets. It doesn't adopt a final budget. It approves the proposed budgets and then calls for a public hearing. That calling for the public hearing then allows us to open up a public hearing under agenda item number 5, where the citizens, ratepayers, and interested public can present comments on the proposed budgets. And then we'll accept those comments and then move on to the final budget hearing, which will occur on July 11th, where you'll adopt the final budget for the UCFD and the water company. What I would like to do, with the permission of the chairman, Chairman Crane, is to first address agenda item number 3, which is the Carefree Water Company budget, because I think that we'll talk about some things that will carry over into the discussion of the UCFD budget. So do I have your permission to do that? Thank you, Chairman. So let me forward through some of these slides, and we'll get back to these. So what I have forwarded onto is agenda item number 3, which is the proposed budget for the Carefree Water Company for fiscal year 23-24, which includes our proposed rates, fees, deposits, and charges. And just to give you a quick overview and highlights of some of the important things that you might, and takeaways you might want to have from this budget process, is our projected revenues are increasing significantly in this coming fiscal year by about $1.2 million. Last year, our projected revenues were at the $3.5 million level. We're expecting those to increase to $1.47 million in this upcoming fiscal year. The primary driver for those revenue increases is the acquisition of over 500 new customers in the CSA, the Carefree Service Area, which is neighborhoods A, B, and C. And there are some other drivers, but that is the primary driver for these revenue increases. Some other summary items on our budgets and water rates. This new budget proposal and water rate proposal for the water company is consistent with the 5-year rate plan that was approved by the board in 2021. This is year 2 in that 5-year rate plan. It does recommend and propose a 4.4% increase in our base rate and our commodity, so across the board increase in our rates of 4.4%, which results in an average residential bill increasing by about $5.29 per month, based on an average water usage over the year of about 12,000 gallons per month. An overview of some of the rate considerations that we take into account, some drivers that we have in our rate process. Of course, this one, as we talked about, is kind of our primary goal was to stay the course, be consistent with our 5-year rate plan that was approved in 2021. So this budget is consistent with that rate plan. And some other major drivers and considerations that we take into account in our budgeting process is APS power, CAP charges, Scottsdale charges for treated surface water, general and administrative charges, which we call GNA, which are internal charges, and then R&M charges, which are replacement and maintenance costs for the water company. And as you can see by the numbers on this slide, in all of those areas we're seeing significant increases based on inflation, supply chain issues, and the like. You'll notice that the CAP charges are going up the most for untreated delivery of untreated water. They're going up 16%, which is a reflection of our shortages on the Colorado River and our Tier 2A shortage conditions. That with the lower amount of water delivered through the CAP canal, that increases their charge on a per acre foot basis of water delivered. So talking about a little bit about the cost of water, which is shown on pages 9 and 10 in your budget packet. This is the single most expensive line item in our budget. The overall cost for this coming fiscal year for water are going up about 33% to $1.6 million. Last year, I think the budget amount was about $1.2 million. And the primary driver for this increase is, as expected, the increased demand of over 500 new customers in the CSA and neighborhoods A, B, and C. The flip side of this cost discussion, of course, is that we have revenue generated from those additional 500 plus customers that then offsets this overall cost. And some other drivers include the cost of Scottsdale treated water, which is going up 5%, and the cost of raw CAP water, which we talked about, which is increasing by 16%. As far as G&A expenses, which are general and administrative expenses shown on pages 11 through 15 in your budget packet. Overall, I'm pretty proud of the fact that we're kind of holding the line on G&A expenses. Overall, they're going up about 2%, with payroll costs going up only 1%, but this includes a 4.7% cost of living adjustment for all employees and an expected 10% increase in health, dental, and vision benefits for employees. What's driving this down, though, is our younger employee demographic that has reduced our costs. But I do need to say that we have experienced significant staffing issues in our field staff. Over the last 6 months, we've lost 3 field staff. We've been able to replace 2 of them, but our field supervisor position is still vacant. So we are, with only 4 field staff, even having 1 vacant position makes it difficult to function, let alone 2 and 3. But we are slowly filling those back up, but the employment market out there is very, very difficult. I was hoping in this budget process to potentially address the expansion of our field staff to 5 employees, because I think we've taken over enough additional responsibilities in neighborhoods A, B, and C in the Carefree service area to justify, at least in the foreseeable future, 1 additional field staff. But it just wasn't in the budget cards at this point. But I would like to revisit that halfway through the fiscal year to see if there might be room and opportunity to increase field staff to 5 positions. Our insurance costs for this next fiscal year are dropping considerably by about 58%. That reflects a significant reduction in subcontracted work, which is the work that we had very high amount of subcontracted work in this fiscal year that we're in right now because of all the construction we were doing under the Carefree Water Consolidation Project. That will be reducing over this next fiscal year, and our insurance company looks at that as reduced risk and therefore reduced insurance premiums. R&M, our replacement and maintenance fund, overall is going up a significant amount, about 18%, although it's not a huge line item in our budget, which reflects additional R&M expenses in the acquisition areas. It also reflects a significant increase in material costs and supply chain issues that everybody is experiencing. And we are focusing on fire hydrant maintenance and repair in this upcoming fiscal year. We actually just completed our fire hydrant exercising, which we skipped last year because of how busy we are. We completed that in our original service area. Now we need to jump into the acquisition areas and do some inventory of our fire hydrants and assessment to figure out what kind of maintenance needs to be done in neighborhoods A, B, and C. So significant efforts coming up in the next fiscal year. Our reserve fund for the water company, which is shown on page 19, sits at $1 million. That has slowly risen over time. When I came on board 10 years ago, our reserve fund was at $650,000. We've slowly increased that to $1 million. And my recommendation is for next fiscal year, we reanalyze and retarget that reserve amount for future fiscal years and maybe growing that based on our increased size. But we will be talking about the reserve fund additionally as we get into the UCFD discussion. Our capital improvement program for this year is still healthy. We anticipate funding the CIP program in an amount just over $600,000. We don't anticipate in the CIP program adding in any additional fire hydrants, but we will be incorporating 14 hydrants in the Silver Saddle project and the Peaceful Place project, which we requested funding from the town or capital advance from the town when we presented to the town in their budget workshops. And if we do complete those 2 projects with a town advance of $2 million, we will add in 14 additional fire hydrants. We are budgeting system improvements and pipeline improvements in the capital improvement program to the tune of $386,000, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the UCFD budget. We also have a line item for technology and upgrades to our SCADA system. Our SCADA system is our supervisory control and data acquisition system. That's a system that automatically runs our wells, our reservoirs, our booster pump stations. It's the system that allows us to go home at night. It originally was installed in the 2006 time frame. Normally, technology improvements like this have major overhauls in the 5 to 10 year time frame. We haven't done a major overhaul, just done minor upgrades to our SCADA system since the 2006 time frame, so it is due for somewhat of an overhaul, and I've budgeted $100,000 for that. Our capital equipment fund deposit for this year we're putting at $75,000, up from $50,000 last year. This fund was set up to kind of equalize out our expenditures on capital equipment, and that increase does reflect the fact of very significant increases in costs for large capital equipment such as trucks, backhoes, Vector equipment, all the things large equipment we need to run the water system. And finally, under the capital improvement program water rights category, we do have 3 sub-items under this category that we are proposing to fund. Our NIA water, which is our non-Indian agricultural CAP water, to the tune of $16,000. Our participation in the Bartlett Dam modification study, which could result in additional water rights, to the level of $30,000. And also participation in the SCIF project, which is tied to the Bartlett Dam modification project. And we'll be talking about that under agenda item number 6 to a tune of just over $8,300. So the last item I think we need to address is our fees, deposits, and charges. We did do a significant overhaul of our fees, deposits, and charges during the last budget cycle, but there is one significant change to our fees that is in this budget cycle, which is the cost for all new service line construction. That would be 1 inch, 1.5 inch, and 2 inch service lines, which reflects significant increases in our labor costs, our material costs, equipment costs, and private services that we need to contract for to complete service line installations. Unfortunately, we are not offering service line installations at this point in time because of the staffing constraints that I talked about. But at the time that we do get at full staff and we feel like we can start to offer these services, I would like it to be at an appropriate level of cost. Right now, what folks are doing, if they do come in for, say, new single-family home construction, they do have to go out on the private market and get a contractor to install a service line if they want to build a new home in Carefree. With that, that's an overview of our Carefree Water Company budget and water rates. I'd open it up to any questions that the board might have.
Any questions from the board?
Yes. Good, thank you, nice presentation. What was the driver for the 16% cap increase? Was that across the entire state for everybody, or was it something unique for us to have that much of a hit?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Hatcher, that's across the board for all users on the CAP system. And the big driver is they have a lot of fixed costs associated with the CAP that don't change no matter whether the canal is full or whether it's half full or empty. With the fact that we're in a Tier 2A shortage condition, that deliveries are going down through the CAP system, they still need to spread those costs over users. With fewer deliveries to spread those costs over, the costs are driven up. And that's really the big driver is the drought in the desert southwest and the shortage conditions on the Colorado River and smaller deliveries through the CAP canal. The more deliveries, the more they can spread those costs over, and the lower the per acre foot rate goes down.
What's the intent with the $1 million reserve account? What's the game plan? What you use that for?
A reserve account is similar to the rainy day fund that the town has. It's for unusual conditions that come up. It's for emergencies, unforeseens that come up. COVID, who would have thought that we would have a worldwide pandemic? Fortunately, our customer base here in Carefree was very resilient. COVID didn't have much impact for us. Other places in the country weren't as lucky as we were. There's any unforeseen issues that could come up. The reserve is there for us to cover those costs.
Do you anticipate trying to increase that each year, or is there a cap, a dollar amount you?
I would expect that as let me back up a little bit, sorry. The AWWA, which is the American Water Works Association, has some recommendations on how to set reserves. We look at those guidelines, and it is based on what your debt service is, what your operating budget is, what kind of capital expenditures you typically have. And so you look at those things, and now that our system size is increasing, it stands to logic that our reserve should increase too.
Do you have a number in mind?
I don't right now. I need to reanalyze it, but I'm thinking it's going to be not substantially more than $1 million, but somewhat more than $1 million. I would think somewhere between $1 and $2 million.
Okay. Just one more question, if I may. You had stated on your illustration that the fire hydrant cost was zero. Is that grant money? Or did I misinterpret that?
No, we're not budgeting for any new fire hydrants in the CIP program. We are doing. If the Silver Saddle project gets constructed, and if the Peaceful Place project, Booster Pump Station project gets constructed, 14 new fire hydrants will be operable within the Carefree Water Company service area. And probably, if I back up and water consolidation project, if you remember, how we budgeted back then, we typically budgeted for three fire hydrants a year to increase coverage somewhere within the Carefree Carefree Water Company service area. So we were trying slowly to increase fire protection within the town, because we've done so much construction associated with the water consolidation project. We kind of push the pause button on fire hydrant installations, and as we get back into more normalcy with the water company budgets, we will probably see that the fire hydrant budget start to have maybe 3 additional fire hydrants installed somewhere within the town. The problem is we're running out of, you need a minimum of a 6-inch pipeline to install a fire hydrant, and we're kind of running out of 6-inch lines that don't have fire hydrants associated with them. So what we need to do in conjunction with installing a new hydrant is increase some of our deficiently sized pipes, our 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch lines, increase those to 6-inch or larger lines so that we can install fire hydrants on them. But that's a much, much more aggressive and costly program than just putting on a fire hydrant on a 6-inch line. That wasn't there.
Just out of curiosity, what does a fire hydrant cost to install? Just ballpark.
I was budgeting, I believe, about $1,500 pre-COVID for a fire hydrant installation, and we were doing those installations with our own crews. I would imagine that post-COVID we're going to have to increase that budget amount to $2,500 or more per fire hydrant.
Thank you.
I have a question, Greg. So actually 2 questions. You mentioned being down 2 staff. Okay, you had originally lost 3, you hired 1. In terms of exit interviews, reasonings, why you lost 2, was it strictly because of salary? Are we at a point, have you examined that? Are we competitive now, salary-wise? And then the second part of my question is criteria to add staff. What are you stating is, why do we need 5 with the additional service area? What are you basing it on? Is it number of accounts per field technician? How is that determined? And is there some standard out there in municipalities with water companies that are followed?
Mm-hmm. You know, to answer the first part of your question, as far as why we've lost staff, I think it's kind of the perfect storm. One staff left to go fulfill their dreams to move out of state and take their family with them. Two have left, 4 other opportunities. A big driver on one, I think, was salary, and we weren't competitive. I think another one was opportunity in kind of another to grow professionally. Being a small organization, we only have a certain amount of work that we do. We do distribution. We don't do a lot of water treatment, wastewater treatment, and so they wanted a little bit broader experience, and so we lost one because of that. I think it is challenging right now from a cost perspective and what we can offer to get new employees. One thing we've been grappling with is the fact that we're not on the state retirement system like the town is, and that can be a big draw for some people, especially most operators in this area have been under the state retirement system if they've worked for a municipality. And to pull them out of that is difficult, and so that's kind of a drawback. And I've been talking with Candace. We've been talking to the state retirement program on how do we do that. There's plus and minuses. It's a double-edged sword, however, because with inclusion into the state retirement program, there's a lot of contribution each employee needs to make along with the employer.
Right.
We try and do as much as the town does for our employees retirement-wise, but when the employees get into that, there's a huge amount they have to put into the state retirement program. So we need to kind of educate the employees and make them aware of that. So there's a lot of things that have factored into our staff and our staffing levels. The second question was, I'm sorry.
Related to how do you determine the number of staff that you need?
Correct.
You had mentioned
Correct.
needing to add a staff. Is there a standard?
I haven't looked at any
accounts?
standard, and it's probably a good idea to number of field staff per account. But I think we're in an unusual situation here, where we've acquired a very large amount of new service area, and we know that in certain areas, the maintenance of that system was we feel somewhat deficient, including fire hydrants, valves. And so we need to get in there. We need to inventory what we've got. We need to assess what we have, and do some kind of maintenance program in there. And I think just in those things alone and adding those into our GIS system, I'm feeling is requiring a lot of effort, a lot of commitment on our part, and that's kind of the gut feeling I've got.
Is your field staff pretty stretched right now? Are they working a lot of overtime as a result of being down one person?
Yeah, my field staff is pretty stressed, and I'm pretty stressed right now, to be honest with you. But we're managing, and we've got 2 staff right now. We've got a 3rd one coming on board mid-June, and so we're slowly getting back up to where we should be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Greg, does the budget assume that we've hooked up Lowe's and the CVS building and the homes across Carefree Road, and the 21 homes are hooked up? In other words, everybody's in the barn?
It does make a general assumption that pretty much all of the CSA and neighborhoods A, B, and C are connected. There is a little bit of wiggle room in, we've got 93% of the customers connected, so we're getting in most of the revenue, but we do kind of on a general basis assume that all of the CSA is connected to the system.
So does the 300 acre foot cover everybody, or do you need additional or incremental acre feet for those?
No, the 300 acre feet covers everybody.
The fact that you have extra.
Yeah, as far as what is getting transferred over from Cave Creek, we have 378 acre feet, which covers both the existing demand from the Carefree service area plus future demand of undeveloped parcels. So we have a little bit of reserve to put in the bank, if you will.
Well, you took my question about personnel. So we're good to go.
All right, we done with the questions? All right, now I've got to jump back to, sorry, I don't know an easy way to do this. Jump around in the presentation. All right, if you're okay, Mr. Chairman, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, which is the proposed UCFD budget for fiscal year 23-24. Discussion just like the Carefree Water Company budget. Some budget highlights for this year. This UCFD budget does give us authority for finalizing the Carefree Water Consolidation project. It also gives us budget authority to complete the Silver Saddle project, which we talked about at the town's workshop 2 and 3 weeks ago, to the tune of $2 million. That includes $800,000 of federal community grant that we've received for the Silver Saddle project, along with $1.2 million of local matching funds that would come from the town advance discussed at the budget workshop. And so authority for completion of the Silver Saddle project would be included in this budget. Debt service payments, our first repayment of the Series 2021 bond to the tune of $850,000 is included in this budget. Reminds me to make sure to check my phone. And also a capital advance payment to the town, reduced capital advance payment to the town of $20,000, which kind of acknowledges the fact that we have increased debt service that's coming into effect this year. And then our capital lease payment to the town for the WIFA loan of just under $245,000. This next slide shows you the top half, if you will, of our proposed budget sheet, which is the revenue sources for the UCFD, with the first line item being the funds available, kind of carry over from last year. The majority of those are from our Series 2021 bond issuance. The next three revenue items are revenues from the Carefree Water Company. In normal years, that will be pretty much the sole source of funding for the UCFD. It normally does come from the Carefree Water Company, and we will talk about those line items a little bit further on in the presentation. And then some other revenue sources that are particular to this year will be the federal community grant of $800,000 and the town capital advance, and which includes the federal local match for the Silver Saddle project of $2 million. This next slide shows you the second half of the sheet for our proposed UCFD budget, which are the expenditure items. First line item is rent. We do occupy a building that is owned by the town, so we do pay rent to the town. Not a significant amount, but we do have to budget for that. The next item is the biggest line item in this year's budget for the UCFD, which is our line for capital expenditures and construction. And then the next grouping of expenditures is our debt service expenditures, which includes payment of our first bond payments for our Series 2021 bond, a small amount of trustee fees, our payment to the town for the capital advance, and our capital lease payment or WIFA payment. What I'd like to do now is focus on the Carefree Water Consolidation project. And I do want to say that at the town budget workshop, I did present some information on where we are as construction-wise for the water consolidation project and financially. I did not do a very good job in my presentation. I did not have all the information available to me, so we will be updating that information in tonight's presentation and giving you real good numbers as far as where we sit financially with the water consolidation project. I did want to go through from a scorecard basis where we're at, and we've talked about this before. we've transitioned 93% of the customers over to, that we anticipate transitioning over to the Carefree Water Company system. So over 500 customers have been transitioned over. About 96% of the meters have been replaced, and for all intents and purposes, 100% of the pipelines that we needed to install for the project to transition these customers over has been installed. The Tom Darlington Water Storage Reservoir is about 85% complete, moving towards completion. And then the one booster pump station that we need to improve has not been contracted for, but we have talked about that in the town budget workshop. So I think we need to step back and reflect on this and realize what a huge accomplishment this is, no matter who we are. We need to realize that all of Carefree now is pretty much under one water provider, which was a huge goal under the Carefree Water Consolidation Project. So I'm very proud of this accomplishment. I think everyone else should be, that Carefree is under essentially one water provider, and that everybody in the town can come to you as the board and you as the council to address any water issues that they have. Again, I believe this is a big accomplishment that we need to celebrate. It's happened over a long period of time, all of these transitions, so there never was one event where the band came out and played, but I think we need to toot our horn a little bit and be proud and give ourselves a little bit of accolades on the major project that a small town like ours has accomplished. And I do need to throw out some kudos to my staff. This has put upon my staff a huge amount of effort. You would not believe how much additional effort we've had to factor into our workload, and we've taken it on like troopers, and maybe are a little worse for wear, but we've weathered it and we've gotten it done. So
please pass along from the board our thanks to the staff, and including yourself. You were just incredible, the work that you've done the last 2 or 3 years.
No, thank you,
I mean,
Mr. Chairman. It hasn't been an easy process, but it's been a very rewarding process, and a lot of challenges, a lot of learning going on, continual learning. So, and we'll learn as we keep going.
Yep.
So thank you. All right, we're going to delve a little bit more into the water consolidation project, give you a construction summary and a cost summary, probably most importantly. Just to tell you and kind of refresh the delivery method we use for the water consolidation project. We use what's called the CMAR process, which is Construction Manager at Risk. That's how we selected the contractor who would be doing the construction on the project. It is a qualifications-based selection, and under that process, the CMAR, who is Aiken Gardner, gives you GMPs, which are guaranteed maximum prices, and then you develop contracts based on the GMPs that they give you. You can do an overall 1 GMP for an entire project, or you can break it down into multiple GMPs. For this project, because it was so widespread, so varied, we ended up doing 6 GMPs, 3 pipeline GMPs and 3 reservoir GMPs. And so anyway, I think the GMP, that title, Guaranteed Maximum Price, is probably a little bit of a misnomer, because it gives you the impression that no matter what, this is the maximum price the contractor will charge you. That's not the case. As with any construction, there are things, what the GMP guarantees you is that based on the plans that you have given the contractor, if nothing varies at all, then that's the price, the maximum price that they will charge you for that. We all know that when you get into construction, there are a lot of variables, and I have 3 in here that are typical variables that you encounter in construction projects. There's unforeseen conditions, and in a project like ours, the biggest unforeseen condition is, and for pipeline construction, is hard dig, what we call hard dig, or running into rock. And we knew in Carefree You just, all you have to do is look around. You see there's a lot of rock around Carefree. We were gonna run into pipeline alignments where we might have hard dig or rock conditions. Second item is quantity changes. Everything's kind of theoretical when you put it on paper. Things change when you go out in the field. You either need to install a little bit more pipeline, a little bit less pipeline, valves, fire hydrants, air relief valves, all of those things change when you get out in the field. And then of course there's scope changes when you get out in the field and you start doing construction. There are things that you realize need to be changed, or things that differing conditions where you need to change the scope of the project. In that case, you do owe the contractor when you change these things, or realize any of what I call these three items risk. Any of these risks get realized, they could impact the cost that you have to pay the contractor. So again, we had 6 GMPs for this project, the largest being GMP number 2, included a bulk of the pipeline work. So we'll focus on discussing and talking about GMP number 2. The table that's at the bottom of this slide does give you a summary of where we are as far as project costs and project funding. The total project funds that were available to us were $23.18, so essentially $23.2 million. And of that, available for construction was just over $18 million. So as you can see from these numbers, there were $5 million in what we call soft costs. That includes all kinds of different things, such as the cost of issuing the bonds, the cost of designing the project, so some upfront monies for hiring Aiken Gardner to give us input into the design of the project, legal fees associated, and we did end up, because of some of the litigation we were involved with, significant legal fees. So a lot of different things factor into the soft cost. So totaling up the costs minus those costs of GMP number 2, so pipeline GMPs, which would be GMPs number 1 and 3, totaled about $2.7 million. The GMPs for the Tom Darlington Water Storage Reservoir were A1 through A3, just under $5 million, which left for us available for GMP number 2 about $10.6 million. The contract amount for GMP number 2 was $9.42 million, which left us a contingency of just under $1.2 million. So that's kind of just a broad overview of where we are and where we were with the financing of the project. Again, GMP number 2 had the greatest amount of risk because it had the most amount of pipeline installation. In all of these categories, unforeseen conditions, quantity changes, and scope changes. And just to go through what risk was realized under this project, we did run into hard dig at various areas throughout Carefree for a total of additional costs of $835,000. Quantity changes amounted to $134,000, and then scope changes amounted to, there was an additional 16-inch pipe, which we will talk about a little bit further, along Carefree Highway, which the cost for that totaled $1.8 million, and some other scope changes, miscellaneous other changes amounted to $435,000. So totaling all of these things up, it gets us a total of $3.2 million with an available contingency of $1.2 million. So as you can see, there is a funding need as we approach the end of the project. Fortunately, we do have a plan to handle this realized risk, this risk that we encountered for GMP number 2, but we do have a plan to take care of this funding need, and that's with current funds that we have available under the water company. There's about 4 accounts that we have available to us that we want to use, that we're proposing to use with the board approval to meet this funding need that will have no impact on the ratepayers as far as increasing the needed water rates, because these are existing funding pots, if you will. And with the first one being development or capacity fees. Since I've been here, all of the capacity fees, which we've collected, and these are fees from new development, from either subdivisions or new individual home developments. It's essentially a buy-in for our existing capacity in the water system. We've been putting those monies into a pot to use for some circumstance such as this, and that amounts to about $680,000 that we have in the development fee pot. We also have a CIP holding account or carryover account for CIP capital improvement projects that have not been constructed, have not been completed. That fund right now sits at about $640,000. And we also have a capital reserve fund that previous Mayor Les Peterson set up. We didn't have much opportunity to fund that, but we did, I think, have 1 year of funding 3 or 4 years ago to the tune of $130,000. So we do anticipate or request using that. And we do think that this deserves consideration of the board to use some water company reserves to the tune of $200,000. And finally, we are budgeting in the fiscal year 2023-24, this upcoming CIP program. We are budgeting about $390,000 for pipeline improvements. We would propose to use that funding in this fiscal year budget and CIP program to fund this need for a total of just over $2 million, $2.04 million. Totaling up those top 4 items, which are existing funds within water company accounts, that totals about $1.65 million. And as you can see on the revenue sources portion of the UCFD budget, we're calling that the capital fund of $1.645 million. All right, so that's kind of the funding into things. I did want to delve a little bit more into one of the larger items in the risk category, and that's the additional 16-inch pipeline that we constructed along Carefree Highway, and talk to you and the citizens about our rationale behind that. This graphic shows you the area of Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road. I can get our laser pointer to work. So this is Cave Creek Road right here. Hopefully that's showing up for people. This is Carefree Highway along here. And our original GMP number 2 included all of these facilities over on the eastern or right-hand side of this graphic. The 12-inch water line that we're showing here, just the tail end of it actually starts up at the Tom Darlington Water Storage Reservoir, goes south along Tom Darlington, and then turns west along Carefree Highway, and then ends right here at Sunset Trail, Terra Vita Way. At the also what's constructed there is the Scottsdale Interconnect. At this point, then it turns into a 16-inch line, which then carries water further to the west. And at that point, under GMP2, our portion of the 16-inch line would end. At the time we developed GMP number 2, we were having serious discussions, and we felt like the development at the northeast corner of Cave Creek Road and Carefree Highway was moving forward. So we're having discussions with the developer about cost sharing and constructing the remainder of this 16-inch line along Carefree Highway. Unfortunately, that development did not pan out. COVID hit, and that development essentially went away, but we still had the demand of Lowe's, existing Lowe's Home Improvement Center at the northwest corner of Cave Creek Road and Carefree Highway. Significant fire flow demand of 3,000 gallons per minute. So I had our engineers on the project reanalyze where we were with GMP2, and they came up with recommendations to add on an additional about 1,100 feet, 1,200 feet of 16-inch pipeline from Sunset Trail down to Carefree Mountain Estates, or Carefree Mountain Drive, which gives us much more opportunity to get water into the network of pipelines in the neighborhood A area through the residential area, much better means to get water over to the Lowe's so that we can fulfill that 3,000 gallon per minute amount of fire flow that we need to get to them in case of a fire situation. This original amount of 16-inch pipeline in GMP2 was about 865 feet. So what this does do for us, however, is because we have constructed this amount of pipeline along Carefree Highway, it does open up the ability to develop the northeast corner and open up discussions with them when we have a viable developer at the northeast corner, open up some discussions with them about finishing out that 16-inch line and cost-sharing arrangements for parts of the system that are already developed and constructed. So with that, I'd open it up to any questions that the board has on the UCFD budget, and I'll try to answer those questions.
Okay, questions from the board?
Yes, if I may. Gary, it was a little hard for me to hear you. That 16-inch pipeline that you're looking to do in the past slide, is that something that we're looking to do for the 1.6 million? Was that at 840 some feet?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, let me back up to that slide.
Because if we finish that, we talked about cost sharing as well in other projects, so how are you going to tie that all together?
The original amount of pipeline was 865 feet. The additional pipe, and all this has been constructed, is about 11 or 1,200 feet. So totaling, we've got about 2,000 feet of 16-inch line that is in the ground.
All right, so is it complete all the way to Cave Creek Road?
Not to Cave Creek Road. It does end right here
about
where it
there?
ties into our what's now our existing system, and then does distribute water up into portions of neighborhood A and along Carefree Highway for delivery to all of the residents in neighborhood A, and will allow us to deliver water when we're done with construction along Cave Creek Road to Lowe's.
All right, just one question on the budget. Of the 23.2 million that we raised, you allocated, looks like you're going to spend 18.14, I believe, leaving about 5 million, and then you had two of the slides representing a $3 million expenditure, one about 2. So in doing those projects, will that utilize all the funds that we've raised? Is that what that 5 million that you had earmarked to do, was to cover those two expenditures? One was 3, one was 2 million roughly.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, all of those monies have been expended. This is kind of a cost accounting of what monies have been spent, but yes, there has been about $5 million spent in these soft costs that were, and most of the soft costs were encountered at the beginning of the project, such as issuing the bonds, doing the design work, some of the legal fees that we had, and they were really encountered at the beginning of the project.
So for the most part, all those funds have been exhausted.
All the $5 million, yes, that is a cost accounting, but for the most part,
But of the
those
23.2, are they all exhausted at this point?
yes, they all are accounted for as
Okay.
I've accounted for them on these slides, yes.
And just one more question. The 3 reservoirs, the one big tank we just did on Tom Darlington, were the 2 smaller ones you had to put in someplace? Was that it?
No, there's 3 GMPs associated with the reservoir project. We did divide that one reservoir project into 3 segments of construction. So there's not 3 reservoirs that were constructed. There were 3 phases of construction for the reservoir.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question. If you go back to your last slide,
last slide in the presentation,
And it
or?
showed the 16-inch pipe on Carefree Highway.
Down to that, okay. Which one, part of that do you want it? Okay.
So
then
the
16.
red arrow near the intersection of Carefree Highway and Cape Creek Road, what's that all about?
That's just, there is an existing pipeline there, and so that's just a line that I'm showing how we can get water with this additional pipeline that we constructed, additional 1,200 feet of pipe that we constructed, how we can get water through. I didn't show all the networks of pipes that are available in neighborhood A, but it shows generally how we can get water over to Lowe's and fulfill that 3,000 gallon per minute demand. That same system that we use to distribute flows over to Lowe's, we use for delivery to the residents in neighborhood A, and we can use for delivery to the northeast corner with some supplemental facilities that they'll need to come in and construct, along with potential cost sharing in the facilities that we've already constructed.
So that's a pre-existing 16-inch line that's,
It's not 16 inch, it's, for a portion of it, there is a 12-inch line in Carefree Highway, and then it turns to 8-inch at, I think at right here at this location, at the edge of the undeveloped parcel at the northeast corner.
so when a developer comes to the northeast corner, that developer will have to fund and build a 16-inch pipeline from the tip of the arrow, like right,
Right there. So these red arrows are just flow paths
Oh,
and
okay,
existing
okay. So
pipes.
from Sunset-
So I should have made those different color,
Okay,
but from this point is where the 16-inch line ends. We're anticipating we'll need a 16-inch line all the way down, at least to the edge of this future development. So probably another 2,000 feet of pipeline to get to the northeast corner, along with potential cost sharing of what we've already constructed.
so the developer will pay for that.
That's what we're anticipating, yes.
What do you expect that to be cost-wise?
I don't know at this point in time. I couldn't give you and with construction costs, going kind of bonkers on us, it's anybody's guess. It will depend quite a bit on when it's constructed.
Any other questions?
Sorry about not talking into the microphone very well. Apologize to the audience.
Okay, Greg, before I move on to item number 4, anything else?
That's it as far as the budget discussion goes, if that's where you'd like to go.
Sure.
Okay, so agenda item number 4 is your consideration of resolution 2023-03, which does address the proposed budgets for both the water company and the UCFD for fiscal year 2023-2024. The water company budget does include our rates, fees, deposits, and charges. And just to give you an idea of what you'll be voting on when you vote on resolution 2023-03, it does approve the proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24 for the UCFD, and the proposed budget for the water company for that same fiscal year, including our rates, fees, deposits, and charges. And again, I want to emphasize, it sounds like a final approval of the budget, but it is not. It approves the proposed budget. The final adoption of the final budget will occur on July 11th. It does also order a public hearing, so we need to approve the resolution under this item first, and then under agenda item number 5, we can open up the public hearing so that the audience can submit any comments to us that they choose to, and that is part of this resolution. It does order the public hearing so that you can open up the public hearing under agenda item number 5. So with that, I'm showing a possible motion on the screen, and would answer any questions or take a motion.
Okay, so it's important to understand that the order that we do this is by state statute. So first we have to approve the proposed budgets, and then we can vote, and then there's a public hearing. and then it comes back to be finalized on July 11th. Okay, so, any questions, any additional questions or comments from council, from the board? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for the approval of Resolution 2023-03, a joint resolution of the Board of Directors of the Town of Carefree, Arizona Utilities Community Facilities District, and the Board of Directors of the Carefree Water Company, Inc., approving a proposed district budget for the fiscal year ending July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024. Approving proposed Carefree Water Company rates, fees, deposits, and charges applicable for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024. And ordering a public hearing on such proposed budget and rates, fees, deposits, and charges as approved.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we will open up a public hearing. So I have so far two speakers who would like to speak. And when I call your name, please step forward to the, we have more coming, to the podium and state your name and address. And please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Okay. And first up would be Ms. Melissa Price.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I believe that God put us on this earth to be good stewards of His holy word, the earth, water, and good stewards towards our fellow man. Over the past 8 years, there has been a great unrest in this country, and we've heard recently about the Democratic mayor in Phoenix giving up water rights in exchange for federal funding. You'd have to be living under a rock not to see the unrest in our own community here. That unrest is partly due to the actions and decisions of the two boards that have been governing our water decisions for the town. This community has opened its eyes and will no longer put blind trust in its elected officials. They are alert now and involved, and that's a good thing. Now, I doubt many residents even realize that you all represent the two joint boards, the Water Company Board and the Community Facilities District, whose main focus is to protect homeowners from financial liability in excess of targeted tax rates and assessments, and a board that should be designed to include other representation other than just town council members. As we approach a new fiscal year beginning July 1, property owners, not just town council members, should have representation on future decisions, wherein we're talking about rates, fees, deposits, and charges. To that end, I am proposing that both boards consider restricting the board members to include a chairman and 2 councilman board members, and allow the appointment of other interested residents from the community as soon as possible before you actually finalize the 2023 budget, the coming fiscal year. I, as one of those who are now a member of the Carefree Water Company, realize I'm paying $20 a month more for my water, a decision in which I as a resident had no representation other than town council members. And I'm not here to say it was a good decision or a bad decision. I'm saying I think others in the community should be members of these 2 water boards for a broader representation from the community. That's the being a good steward toward our fellow man part. As a resident on the west side that pays more for my water, I would not expect to have
Time's up.
future rate increase based on that additional $20 per month, but rather based on the usage. I'm almost done. In closing, I urge you to please consider a change in the board membership immediately before finalizing a budget, and to review closely how future rate increases are applied. Thank you.
So the first sound is like at 2 minutes and 45 seconds. I should have made that clear, but anyway, well done. Thank you. Mr. John Mattis.
Good afternoon, John Mattis, Carefree, and Graythorn Circle. When I started going through the Arizona Corporation Commission's filings by Carefree Water Company, I found some very interesting things on the 2023 filing on 4/7 of this year.
Excuse me, John, would you raise the microphone a little, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
That precipitated me for going back a few years. In 2016, the Carefree Water Company, which is listed as a domestic for-profit corporation, private, showed it had 10 million shares and 10 million shares issued. On 4/23 of 18, same thing showed 10 million shares, 10 million shares issued. On 4/10 of 19, had 1 million shares issued. And, 1 million shares, 150,000 issued. 2/18/21, it showed 1 million shares, none issued. On 4/7 of 23, which I just stated, it was 1 million shares, 150 issued. The curious thing, it shows Les Peterson is still the board chair, and Ms. Amoroso isn't even listed. So the question it has to be asked, if we've got this many issues with filings to a state organization, what else do we have that haven't been found? The last thing I will say is I got my Carefree water bill. Got the bill, but surprisingly there's no insert, yet there was for the ballot measure on raising the property tax. I've ad nauseum spoken to a number of people in town administration, also in the water department, about putting important things into, one of them would be the water transition project, the budget for the water company. It's free. You can either email it as an attachment or stick it in here like you did for the property tax. I think you're missing a good avenue to communicate with people, and I'm asking somebody to look at these ACC filings. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So Greg, if you could check into that and circle back to Mr. Mattis.
Chairman,
Oh, yeah.
I did update those filings in May,
Okay,
so
well, thank you.
they are up to date. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. Ms. Jan Neal, would you wish to speak at the town council meeting or at this meeting? This meeting, please come up.
Good afternoon, I'm Jan Neal. I live in the Boulders in Carefree. In watching the presentation today, I have a couple of points I'd like to make. The water transition project, or whatever we're calling it now, the water consolidation project, as we all know, that was an extraordinarily expensive project to bring 500 plus homes onto the Carefree water system. We saw the costs continue to escalate, and it's very disconcerting that all of this happened, as we know, without a public vote. It's really disappointing that we didn't have a public vote. Now we see a $2 million overage and a zero interest loan by the town of Carefree to the Carefree Water Company. Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but I noticed that the loan repayment to the town of Carefree for this coming budget year is proposed to be $20,000. At that rate, it would take 100 years to repay. So what is the plan for repayment? And why would there be no budget cuts in the water company to offset? Because from the way I'm looking at it, that's $2 million that could be going for things that the residents would like to have in the town of Carefree. Maybe some of those will be reflected in the general plan, like our open space, like the 48 acres. And I just wanted to comment that I think it's a shame. And I'd like to know how this loan's going to be repaid. Thank you.
In the last comment, Carrie Johnson, maybe you wish to speak at the town council meeting. Fair enough. Okay, any other comments from the public? So that'll close the a public hearing. And Mr. Crossman, anything, would you like to address any of these comments, or?
Just real briefly, Mr. Chairman, some of the notes I took from Mr. Mattis's comments. We have one shareholder for the water company. The shareholder is the UCFD. So the UCFD owns all of the stock, if you will, in the water company. So yeah, those filings, in 2016, 2017, were in error. Are they substantial? No, because essentially our one shareholder is the UCFD, and it owns all of the water company. I think the true numbers, which we finally realized when we were going through the water consolidation project and looking at the original formation of the UCFD back in 1998, the true numbers are 150,000 issued shares for the water company. All of those issued shares reside with the UCFD. So whether it's 10 million, which is not a correct number, or 1 million or 150,000 shares that have been issued, the true number is 150,000 shares. They all reside with the UCFD. So it's somewhat of a moot point, but I can understand your confusion with those ACC filings. Candace did say that she has updated the ACC records. It should show Chairman Crane. It should be updated with board member Amoroso. So that I'm thinking both her and I are a little perplexed why we're not seeing that reflected on the ACC records. Ms. Neal, the reduction in the repayment of the town capital advance is temporary. It was done for these initial years when we're starting our Series 2021 bond repayment. I'd have to go back and look at the repayment schedule, but it does very quickly get back up to a level of, I believe, what our bond payment was for the original purchase of the water company, which is about, I believe, $600,000 per year. So we will be getting up to that level and being able to repay at least the existing bond or the existing town capital advance amount by the end of 2028, I believe. If we do extend it by $2 million, we will have to extend that repayment period out into the future. I don't know exactly how many years, but it won't be 100 years. I can guarantee you that. So with that, I think I've addressed some of the issues that were brought up.
Gary, Greg, could you answer the question as to the purpose of the $2 million and how the town benefits with the use of those funds?
The purpose of the $2 million, and I can go through that. We went through that at the town budget workshop, is for two projects. The Silver Saddle Improvement Project, which has significant benefit in the eastern areas of Carefree. About 528 customers benefit from that, along with installing fire hydrants in the Highlands area, 7 fire hydrants in the far north portions of Carefree, where we do lack a significant number of fire hydrants, and then the funding of the Peaceful Place booster pump station project, which has 7 additional fire hydrants associated in the current service area, or the pre-existing service, Carefree Water Company service area, that needs booster pump station improvements in order to feed those fire hydrants. So without going real in-depth into the 2 projects that capital advance would fund, that's a general overview of the benefits of the town and our existing water company customers.
Thank you.
Any other yes, please do.
So I have said in the past that when I say something that's inaccurate or incorrect, that please let me know what it is so I can correct it, because I do try to be accurate. So Stephanie reached out to me to ask me to check my numbers on the amount of debt service that the new customers would be paying. And I've always said it's a substantial portion. So when I went to check the numbers, what I presume I did is I just looked at the costs of the cap water, which is actually substantially higher now than it was back then, but that's what I was looking at based on the cap rates on their website. So obviously that was incorrect. And so I went back to look at just using the 23-24 data with the current rates, the current cap rates, the current Scottsdale rates, which I left out, which are substantially higher than the cap rates, and took in the amount of revenue that is expected to come in from the 20% of new customers. And this year, based on the debt service, just taking into consideration the cost of water and the cost and the amount of revenue that we're bringing in, the new customers would be paying about 70% of the debt service. Now, next year, debt service is going to increase to the level debt service for the rest of the life of the loan, which will bring that number down to about 55%. And if you wanted to actually take into consideration where we're going to have all of the customers, the new customers, paying for their portion of G&A, then you essentially have what you have across the country is when you do a utilities deal, every ratepayer is paying for it, and that's a normal course of business. But I just wanted to clarify and thank Stephanie for calling me out on that, and I appreciate it, so thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, well, thank you very much. We move on to item number 6.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
members of the board, I'll try and breeze through this item very quickly. It is your consideration resolution 2023-04, which is a cost-sharing agreement related to the Salt River CAP interconnection facility and technical review on for that facility. Just to let you know, the Salt River CAP interconnection facility is also called and abbreviated as the SCIF. It is a facility that would allow Salt River Project, or SRP, to deliver water into the CAP canal. It would require pumping to deliver water that direction. Currently, the CAP can deliver water into the SRP system by gravity, but it can't go the opposite direction. What does this have to do with Carefree? Well, it has to do with our discussion and participation in the modified Bartlett Dam discussion, where we could potentially develop a new water resource. If we do get a new water resource from Bartlett Dam, what we would do is put it into the Verde River, which generally follows this green line path, deliver it to the SCIF, then put the water into the CAP canal, pump the water into the CAP canal, where it could then be taken out by our treatment and transport partners, Scottsdale and Cave Creek, and delivered as potable water to Carefree. Just real quickly to show you, this is a zoom in of where the SCIF would be constructed and how it would operate. Water from Bartlett Dam would travel down the Verde River, then reach its confluence with the Salt River. It would go into the Salt River, then get to what is called right here the Granite Reef Diversion Dam. Would then be diverted into the South Canal, to the SCIF facility, and then the SCIF facility would pump it up into the CAP canal, where it could be delivered to eventually to Carefree as treated potable water.
Is that the blue line?
Let me back
Is that it, the blue line?
The blue line is actually the interconnection between the CAP and the Salt River Project by gravity Salt River Project system. So this is existing in place, and this is where CAP can deliver by gravity through a pipeline down to either side of either canal on both sides of the Salt River. So the skiff pipeline and pump station will be located along this yellow alignment. Just to give you a little background on the skiff and the cost sharing agreement we're proposing to enter into. Carefree and 11 other entities in July of last year, July of 2022, entered into a non-binding MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding supporting the skiff. This cost sharing agreement is the first step in moving towards the design and construction of the skiff. It is United States Bureau of Reclamation technical review of the skiff, because this would be located, all of Salt River Project is a federal facility, federal project. And what the reclamation will do is review and outline any environmental reviews that would be required as part of the design and construction of the skiff. Our cost sharing, our portion of the cost sharing agreement commits us to only a small amount, about $8,300 worth of cost sharing that has been budgeted for in our fiscal year 23-24 CIP budget. And there is a departure mechanism built into the MOU, and which would apply to the cost sharing agreement, although we would be committed, if we approve this cost sharing agreement, to the $8,300. But at any point in time, we can depart if we feel like it's not beneficial to us. We can leave the skiff discussion and potentially recover the funds that we've already committed as part of the skiff design and construction. So with that, I'd open it up to any questions that the board might have, and then show you a possible motion on the screen.
Any questions from the board?
I just think it's vitally important that we keep our fingers in the pie here, because we don't know, ultimately what the Colorado River cuts are going to be. We've had a reprieve from the great winter that we had, but it still doesn't address the issue of, the drought and what ultimately the Colorado River can put out. So I'm very supportive of this project.
Yeah, well said. So the problem is, if there was ever cap cuts, it'll shrink the available water we have from cap, and we want to position ourselves so we have a robust water portfolio, so if there are cuts, it's not so painful for us. And so that's what this allows us to do. This allows us to, if it comes to pass, Bartlett Lake is raised, it allows us to take water from the Salt River, from SRP, rather than strictly from cap and our groundwater. It's a good thing. It's like insurance.
This will allow us to maintain our volume available to the town for years to come. That's the strategy.
Maintain our,
reductions?
we would have to purchase a certain amount of capacity to find what kind of capacity we have in Bartlett Dam, and then that would, when available, then we would be able to utilize that to support or firm up our CAP supplies, reduce our groundwater usage, do a lot of different things that, and really, I think Chairman Crane or Board Member Amoroso stated it very succinctly in saying that it gives us a more robust water portfolio.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2023-04. It's a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Carefree Water Company, Inc., and Arizona Corporation, authorizing the General Manager of the Carefree Water Company to execute the agreement to share costs for the technical review of the SRP CAP interconnection facility among cost share partners in Salt River Project Agricultural Improvement and Power District cost sharing agreement.
Motion to approve Resolution 2023-04, authorizing the general manager of the water company to enter into a cost participation agreement for the skiff technical review.
Second?
Second.
Any other comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. That is the item number 7, adjournment. But first, thank you, Greg. Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, board members.
Okay, motion to
Thank
adjourn?
you, citizens.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, so we will reconvene at 5:30 per the clock on the back wall. And that'll be not reconvene for this, but we'll convene for the town council meeting.